Today we're going to learn about solving absolute value equations. We will be able to solve absolute value equations algebraically and graphically. So our steps for solving an absolute value equation. The first thing we're going to do is isolate the absolute value. You want to make sure that it's the only thing on its side of the equation. Then we're going to split the absolute value into two equations. One positive and one negative. And we're going to solve each equation. And check our solutions. What exactly is absolute value? Absolute value is the distance away from zero. It doesn't tell us a direction, it's just the distance. So in this first example, step 1 is done for us because the absolute value is isolated. It's the only thing on the left-hand side of the equation. So we're going to go to step 2 and split the equation into two others, a positive and a negative. Our first equation, the positive one, will look just like the absolute value equation with the absolute value lines removed. Our negative equation will be negative, and then we're going to turn the absolute value into parentheses, and equals the same number. Then we solve each equation. Our answer could be written as x equals, and then put each value separated by a comma, or you can use curly brackets and make a list of numbers. Now let's use Desmos to confirm our answers. In the first line on Desmos, I'm going to put y equals, and then I'm going to put the left-hand side of my equation. 2x minus 5. In my next line, I'm going to put y equals, and then my right-hand side of my equation, which was 9. Make sure you can see where your v and your straight line cross. They intersect at -2 and +7. Our solutions were -2 and +7, so we're correct. Let's look at another example. This time, our absolute value is not isolated because of the +4 and the -3 out front. So we're going to start by subtracting 4 on both sides. Then dividing by -3. Now that my absolute value is by itself on the left, I can split it up into my two equations. Subtract 2 on both sides. Yeah, -2/3. Start off by distributing the negative. Add 2 to both sides. Divide both sides by -1. We get x is -10/3. Let's confirm that these are our correct answers. When checking our answers in Desmos, we always want to make sure that we're using the typed problem that we started with, not any version after that in case we made a mistake. So the left-hand side of our equation was -3, absolute value of x plus 2 plus 4, and our right-hand side was 0. So I'm going to adjust my graph so I can see where the v and the line intersect. -3.3 repeating would be -10/3, and -0.6 repeating would be -2/3. In our last example, it can be very short if you're paying attention to what you're doing. This equation has an absolute value equal to a negative. But earlier we said absolute value is the distance from 0, does not give us direction. A negative gives us a direction. So this problem has no solution, and that's because an absolute value can't equal negative. Now, before you make this judgment, you have to make sure that the absolute value is isolated, which it was here. It's the only thing on its side of the problem, and it's when the absolute value equals a negative. Like we saw in the last example, the variable can equal a negative, but the absolute value by itself will not equal a negative. That's all for today. See you in class.